experiment with it and push boundaries of not only form but also just that sort of sense of pliability and mutability between fiction and nonfiction. And Robert Greene is certainly at the forefront of exploring that very question of what is truth and what is fiction and what is real and what is performance. And we find it eternally fascinating. This is his 5th film. Recent films include Actress, Fake It So Real. He is a writer of Sight and Sound. He is a professor at University of Missouri. He will be here after the show. And right now, I'm really pleased and honored to introduce the producer of Kate Lyn Sheil, who's been with Robert on all of his films, Doug Tirola.
I love these 8:30 screenings too. But I didn't know I was coming up here, so I would have gone to bed a few hours earlier. I just want to say thank everyone for being here. As Caroline said, I've produced all Robert's 5 films. I met him when he worked at a video store on St. Mark's Place called Kim's Video, if anybody's ever heard of it. And he and the director of photography and the other producer, Susan Medusa, have made all 5 of these films and worked together for 10 years. And I think what's just so exciting is he really has a passion for movies, and he has a passion for sort of stretching the definitions people put on movies. And he will be here afterwards, and thanks for being here.
We love producers. Producers make it happen.
Welcome up our filmmaker, Robert Greene.
Hi, thanks. Just real quick, I want to thank Sundance for programming this crazy film, and Cinetic for helping to get the message out about it. They're the best. I also just want to bring up a couple key people. Well, first of all, I want to thank Porto Films and my producers Doug Tirola and Susan Medusa, who have helped me make everything I've ever made. So please give it up for them real quick. Other producer, Bennett Elliott, who has helped me survive this festival as well. As you can see, my voice is dying. This spotlight's crazy. First of all, I just want to bring up the cinematographer, a guy I've collaborated with for years, who without whom this wouldn't obviously be possible. Sean Price Williams. And of course, the star and subject of the film, Kate Lyn Sheil. Hello. Okay.
All right. Before we open it up to the audience, could you just briefly go over the genesis of the project, how you came to Kate, and then Kate, could you talk about how you ended up in this project as well?
Yeah, so I've been somewhat obsessed with this story for maybe a decade, but I never wanted to make a straightforward documentary about it, because I realized somewhere along the line that the obsession was about the story and about what the story made me think about, rather than excuse me, rather than just the events themselves. Because the events, as you see, it's when you dig into her life, it's strange that, you know, what we try to fill, the sort of hole of meaning of why she might do this, they're very unsatisfying, upsetting sort of things. And I really didn't. I'm not a type of person who wants to just dig into the morbid details of something for the sake of it. But I do like that I couldn't, or I did get somewhat obsessed with the fact that I couldn't get through thinking about it, or I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then my last film was a film where I made a documentary about an actor, and I kind of realized if you look at an actor, you can, you know, in a documentary setting, there's a chance to sort of observe like layers and levels of complexity in why you do something, the motivation behind something. And I thought if we could do that, if we could figure out, if we could watch somebody try to understand something, then maybe we can understand, well, maybe I can understand why I'm trying to understand it. And I think that's a natural human thing to try to understand why something happened, but it's also, when we try to make images out of that, it's often totally inadequate and totally, you know, doesn't ever get to the heart of why someone would take their life, and especially why they would take their life in that manner. So the film was really an attempt through Kate to sort of burrow into all that stuff. And Kate and I have been friends for the same amount of time, like 10 years, and Sean, we all worked at Kim's Video together many years ago. So I think the concept of the concept of the film and the name came at the same time. It's like, Kate will play this thing, and I immediately just called Kate and said, hey, could you do it?
Yeah, I mean, all of that is true. I'm not really comfortable. I wasn't really initially comfortable with the idea of being the subject of the documentary, but I am very interested in Steve Chubbuck, and so that sort of avenue into the film was.
You turn your mic on?
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think it's on. It's just.
It is. Very good. So the fact that I'd be investigating the life of Steve Chubbuck was sort of my avenue into the film, and also when I realized that I'd be preparing for a narrative film that was never to be, I realized that I would then be performing the entire time, and I'm far more comfortable performing in front of a camera than I am just being myself.
Thank you. I want to make sure we have some time for questions, so if there's any so far, hand right there.
For Kate, with playing a role like that, that's got to stay with you. How do you come back from that kind of thing after the fact?
Sure.
The question was, for Kate, how do you come back from a role like this that stays with you?
Sure. I think there's always like some residue for an actor after they play any sort of role, but you know what you don't see in the film is everything that happened when we were shooting, which was, you know, these are two of my oldest friends. It was a very lovely experience in a lot of ways, and so, I mean, it was fine. It was a fine transition.
We actually had, it was a relatively, I mean, when cameras were rolling, it got super intense often, but it was, we kind of made sure, and I remember Sean on the flight down, he's like, you gotta, because he knew my instincts as a documentary filmmaker would be to film. We shot over 3 weeks, so we sort of planned it out to be like a fiction film wherein we would need to discover all the things that a documentary has to do in this super tight, compressed timeline. The revelation about finding the footage is not something we knew going into the film. That was something we discovered 2 days before we were done shooting. So that scene is, you know, the urgency of that is very real. But Sean knew that I would try to like record all the time because that's what my instincts are, to try to get as much stuff as I can. And he rightfully said, correctly said, hey, just make sure that there's downtime and that we treat this like another kind of film shoot that Kate might be on, where she has a chance to play Scrabble or whatever, you know, and Monopoly. Oh yeah, I won Monopoly too, so I should remember that. I did. It was great.
I did once too.
Oh yeah, that's true. I totally forgot that. But we tried to we stayed healthy, which was actually key to being able to dive in.
Yeah, and so that it ends up that Kate is also playing Kate and not just being herself. So I mean, you know, because we do laugh and have a lot of fun. There's not really that part of the real Kate is never in the movie. So, I feel like that has to be clear, sort of. Yeah.
Can you actually speak more to that? In what way do you have sort of a roadmap when you are playing Kate, playing Christine, trying to make a movie that doesn't exist, but how do you create sort of a structure that you know you're going to use that can help as an actor kind of figure out, you know, how you're supposed to be in
Sure.
the moment?
Well, there's a lot in that. I mean, first of all, I think in documentaries, everyone's playing themselves anyway. It's something that we don't often say, but it's just true. You know, when a camera starts rolling, you start playing yourself. It's really just, in some ways, just a documentary reenactments, which are and they're meant to fail. Like that's sort of the point of them. They're meant to be inadequate representations because that's how that emptiness was something we were trying to conjure. And that put Kate in a very difficult position because basically I'm saying, play yourself, be yourself, also act badly, also try to inhabit something in you that can bring out something about what we may know about Christine Chubbuck, because we were really learning information as we went, and that was almost an impossible task. So I would say, we would roll something and I'd be like, that's great, and she's like, I'm terrible, and I would say, that's perfect. She's like, what the hell are you talking about?
I was not unaware of what you were
Of course, that's the concept. Yeah, it was the concept from the beginning, but nevertheless, when the cameras are rolling, like that's what we agreed to do from the beginning. But when the cameras start rolling, it puts you in this position, right?
Well, I mean, initially we were not scripting those scenes, and so I was frustrated by the improvisatory nature of them because I wanted to be given the tools to decide to be that rather than being left afloat.
Yeah, I mean, the script, so the original idea was because those reenacted scenes are totally based on, like, almost very strictly, as strictly as they can be, based on what we knew that she might have said, or that she did say, or that, like, we just maybe nudged a little bit from what she definitely said. So they're all, like, on the record things. So my idea at the beginning was, like, we just say that. And that, you know, we just say what's on the page. But that's totally terrible, you know, so as we were navigating this, Kate was teaching me how to direct, basically, which I think you see. I wanted to get that on screen as well.
We have time for a couple more. Yeah, you, sir.
Yes, I was just curious how often you direct, or at all, if you directed Kate, or was that purely documentary at that point?
Well, I mean, this may sound totally absurdist or like reductive to a dumb degree, but I don't know if anything's ever documentary, pure documentary. It's just a philosophy I have. But I directed sometimes and sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I would say, hey, I need you to say this in order to make this other scene make sense, and then Kate would give a real answer. I never scripted, I don't think, your interview answers, but that's totally the same as every documentary that that I know. I mean, not every. I don't want to get stupid. That's not true. Some documentary filmmakers would make that strict assessment that they would never do something like that. But many documentaries say, hey, I need to connect these dots. Could you say this for me? But obviously, we're taking that to a further degree. But I think Kate was acting out what Kate's embodying the whole time what all of us and Bennett and everybody else on the ground went through. And so a lot of times she's saying what she feels, but she's also trying to represent what we were all feeling, which is not uncommon for actors to try to do that for a film.
So some other hands, right there.
So I have a question actually both for you and, funnily enough, the programmer. And that's your philosophy of, do you consider this a documentary? In what ways do you, because you're playing with that definition, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And then also on Sundance, like, this could easily be programmed as a fiction film too, I feel, because it also plays with what is fiction versus what is recreation and that type of idea. So just your thoughts on.
Well, I think the question is whether this is a documentary or not. I mean, I think if you look at the actual elements, they're all very sort of traditional documentary elements. But the way it's put together and the way we shot it makes you aware of the fabricated aspect of it. All I think it is doing is just being more honest about the process. I think, like, there's many documentaries you can go watch. You get hours of Netflix of documentaries that have reenactments in them. But those are escapist reenactments where you're supposed to be lost in the story. And these are reenactments that are making you think about the process of the making of the reenactment. So I think it's just a more honest version of it. At the same time, I do think that all documentaries there's a tension between capturing the reality and structuring a film, and there has to be. The Salesman and Frederick Weisman are highly structured documentaries. In terms of the form stuff, I'm actively trying to question that stuff. And that's hopefully not a dead end. I don't want it to be like, oh, it's fiction, nonfiction. Like, that's so boring if it doesn't lead us to a better understanding of Kate, of Christine Chubbuck, of storytelling, of filmmaking, all that stuff. So hopefully it's put together in a way that makes you think about what you're watching, which I think is just more honest. So I don't know if you want to answer that.
We actually prefer to keep the question on stage to the filmmakers, but we can talk in the lobby for sure.
I can speak for some people. I think they were happy to take that risk, which is cool.
The Sundance Institute actually just recently announced a creative nonfiction initiative specifically for documentary.
Yeah, I'm in the Art of Nonfiction fellowship this year from the documentary film program, so that's cool. So they're actively engaging with those questions, which is cool. So.
One more question, the person I missed before, that'll be our last question.
In being that there's a full narrative that covers almost identical scope, are you worried about this looking like it's a response, or do you think it kind of adds a depth to the really nuanced reality versus fiction that you guys have?
I mean, I'm sure some people will think of one as a response to the other, probably in the order which way you see them, you know. But that doesn't. I mean, we knew about their film and we're friends with them, and we were making the film at the same time. And there's such radically different visions that I don't worry about that. I mean, there's probably there's an inherent sort of questioning in this film about whether you should see the reenactment, whether you should see the footage, whether you should do the film at all. And I'm happy to be asking those questions, but that's not meant to cut off someone else's vision of the story, because I mean, this is I know why they were haunted by the story as well, and I know why. I mean, it makes complete sense why someone would want to make that film. So this is about. I mean, the film is really about us questioning ourselves, and hopefully you get to question yourselves and how you watch it. But it's not to say like you shouldn't do this or like it's bad to make images, because I think it's really good to make all kinds of images, and it's really good to make all kinds of films. So yeah. But I will say, she wanted to be seen. Christine Chubbuck, as Kate says very eloquently in the movie, you know, wanted to be seen, and that's why one of the reasons why she did what she did. And the footage was lost, probably, which is a good thing, maybe, most likely. But 41 years later, we're at Sundance, and now people are talking about the story, and hopefully that actually creates conversation about the things that she was actually talking about, because she made a speech at the end of her life about blood and guts television, and she wanted to bring awareness to depression and suicide and what she was going through, which in the 70s was not talked about. And people commit suicide every single day, despite the fact that we talk about it now much more better. You know, where we have things that can fix chemical imbalances, and we have therapy, and we have all this. People still commit suicide every day, and we don't know about it. So if the two films somehow make you think about that stuff, that's amazing. So
Thank you. Let's please thank Robert, Sean, and Kate.